Imagine this. January 30th, 2026. The Department of Justice drops over 3 million documents, 2,000 videos, 180,000 images, the largest disclosure in American legal history. And the world stopped breathing. Because this wasn't just about Jeffrey Epstein anymore. This was about everyone. Prince Andrew, stripped of every title, forced out of his royal palace. Bill Gates, emails suggesting Epstein helped him cover up affairs. Elon Musk, planning trips to the island. Reid Hoffman, actually went there. Norway's crown princess, asking Epstein for wallpaper advice featuring naked women for her 15-year-old son's room. But here's what nobody's talking about. Virginia Giuffre, the woman who exposed it all, who sued Prince Andrew, who fought for decades to bring these predators to justice, died by suicide in April 2025, just 9 months before these files came out. The files she fought her entire life to release. Was it coincidence? Was it the unbearable weight of trauma? Or was it something else? I'm going to walk you through the most comprehensive breakdown of the Jeffrey Epstein case you've ever heard. Not conspiracy theories, just verified facts from the Department of Justice files released days ago. And I promise you, by the end of this, you'll understand why this story is far from over. Let's start with who Jeffrey Epstein actually was. Because even now, after all these revelations, nobody really knows. He called himself a financier, a billionaire, a philanthropist who donated millions to Harvard, MIT, and other elite institutions. He threw parties with Nobel Prize winners. He had Stephen Hawking on his private island. He funded cutting-edge science research. But here's the thing. Nobody could ever figure out where his money came from. There was no paper trail, no verified clients, no investment portfolio. The man who claimed to manage billions had virtually no documented business operations. What we do know is this. In the early 2000s, he owned a mansion in Manhattan that was one of the largest private residences in New York City. He owned a ranch in New Mexico, a mansion in Palm Beach, Florida, and 2 private islands in the U.S. Virgin Islands, including Little St. James, which locals called Pedophile Island. The truth is, Epstein wasn't primarily a financier. He was a trafficker, a predator with a system. And that system ran for decades. It started in 2005. A mother in Palm Beach, Florida walked into a police station. Her 14-year-old daughter had been sent to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion to give him a massage. But it wasn't a massage. It was sexual abuse. The mother wanted to press charges. The Palm Beach Police Department launched an investigation. What they found was horrifying. It wasn't one victim. It was dozens, maybe hundreds. Girls as young as 14, all recruited through the same pyramid scheme. Here's how it worked. Epstein and his accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, would identify vulnerable girls, usually from poor families, often from broken homes. They'd approach them with an offer, $200 to $300 for a massage. Once the girl arrived at Epstein's mansion, she'd be led to a room. Sometimes Maxwell would be there, sometimes other women. They'd tell her to undress, to touch him, to let him touch her, and then they'd pay her. But here's the sick part. They'd tell her she could make even more money if she brought friends, $200 for every new girl. So victims became recruiters, not because they wanted to, but because they were manipulated, because they needed money, because they were children who didn't understand what was happening. The FBI got involved. By 2007, federal prosecutors had built a 60-count indictment against Epstein. If convicted, he would spend the rest of his life in prison. But then something happened, something that would haunt the justice system for decades. Alexander Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Florida, cut a deal. The deal that would later be called the deal of the century. Epstein would plead guilty to just 2 state charges. Solicitation of prostitution. That's it. No federal charges. No sex trafficking. Nothing about the dozens of underage victims. The sentence, 18 months in county jail. And he didn't even serve it in a real jail. He served it in the Palm Beach County Stockade, where he was allowed to leave for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, for work release. He had his own wing. Private security. He continued running his business from jail. And the most outrageous part? The deal included immunity for all his co-conspirators. Ghislaine Maxwell, any other person who had helped him, all protected. And it was a secret deal. The victims weren't even told. Years later, when asked why he gave Epstein such a lenient deal, Acosta said he'd been told to back off. Told that Epstein belonged to intelligence. What did that mean? We still don't know. Epstein got out in 2009, and he went right back to his old life. Private jets, islands, parties with the world's elite. But one victim refused to stay silent. Her name was Virginia Giuffre, born Virginia Roberts. In 2015, she filed a defamation lawsuit against Ghislaine Maxwell. In that lawsuit, she made explosive allegations. She said that when she was 17, working as a spa attendant at Mar-a-Lago, Donald Trump's resort in Florida, Ghislaine Maxwell approached her, offered her a job. She said Maxwell and Epstein groomed her, trafficked her, forced her to have sex with powerful men, including Prince Andrew. She had a photo. Virginia, age 17, standing next to Prince Andrew, his arm around her waist. Ghislaine Maxwell smiling in the background. Prince Andrew claimed he'd never met her, claimed the photo was fake. But in 2022, he settled a civil lawsuit with Virginia for an estimated $12 million. In 2019, investigative journalists started asking questions again. The Miami Herald published a bombshell series called Perversion of Justice, exposing the 2008 plea deal. Public outrage exploded. The U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York opened a new investigation. On July 6, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey. He'd just flown in from Paris on his private jet. The charges? Sex trafficking of minors. Conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of minors. This time, there would be no deal. He was denied bail. Sent to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, a high-security federal jail. And then on August 10, 2019, at 6:30 in the morning, a corrections officer found Jeffrey Epstein hanging in his cell. Dead. The official ruling? Suicide. But immediately, questions started swirling. How did this happen? Epstein had been on suicide watch after a previous incident, but was taken off it. The cameras outside his cell malfunctioned. The 2 guards assigned to check on him every 30 minutes fell asleep and falsified records. His cellmate had been transferred out the day before. Conspiracy theories exploded. People on both the left and right said the same thing. Epstein didn't kill himself. He was murdered to protect powerful people. But here's what the newly released files from January 2026 show. There was an orange-colored figure seen on surveillance video at 10:39 p.m. on August 9th, the night before Epstein's body was discovered. Someone in an orange prison uniform walking up the stairs toward Epstein's tier, the locked tier where he was housed alone. Official reports said no one entered his tier that night, but the video logs contradict that. When corrections officers were interviewed, one said he didn't remember the time between 10 p.m. and midnight. Another said she never delivered linen, but an internal presentation suggested she'd been seen carrying linen or inmate clothing up to the tier. The files don't prove murder, but they prove the official story has massive holes. Now, fast forward to January 30th, 2026. After years of legal battles, after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act, the Department of Justice finally released the files. Over 3 million documents. And the world learned the true scale of Epstein's network. But first, let me tell you about Virginia Giuffre, because she never got to see this day. On April 25th, 2025, 9 months before the files were released, Virginia Giuffre was found unresponsive at her farm in Neergaby, Western Australia. She was 41 years old. Police declared it a non-suspicious death. Her family said she died by suicide. Virginia had been through hell. She'd testified in courts. She'd been attacked in the media. She'd received death threats. Just weeks before her death, she'd been in a serious car accident when a school bus hit her vehicle. She was going through a divorce, fighting for custody of her 3 children. The weight of her trauma, the years of fighting, the constant re-traumatization of telling her story over and over. It was too much. Her lawyer said that even in death, the coroner's investigation was ongoing. Some advocates called for a full public investigation, given her role in exposing powerful people. But the official conclusion remained suicide. Virginia never got to see the files released. Never got to see Prince Andrew stripped of his titles. Never got to see the tech billionaires exposed. Never got to see justice move forward. And now, let's talk about those files. The DOJ released them on January 30th, 2026. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche held a press conference. He said they'd redacted victims' names to protect them. But almost immediately, survivors started speaking out. They found their names unredacted throughout the documents. At least 31 survivors, who were children when they were abused, had their identities exposed. Survivor Danny Bensky told CBS News she was speechless at how terrible the redactions were. Attorney Spencer Kuven, who represents multiple survivors, said the Department of Justice doesn't care about victims one bit. Meanwhile, the identities of powerful men? Heavily redacted. In some files, women's faces were shown while men's faces were blacked out. In one text message between Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon, Trump's face in a news article was obscured with a black box. But enough slipped through to rock the world. Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, the son of Queen Elizabeth II. The files contained a 2011 letter from a lawyer representing an exotic dancer. The letter claimed Prince Andrew and Epstein asked her to engage in various sex acts during a party where other young women, some appearing as young as 14, were dressed provocatively. The letter said Andrew and Epstein then propositioned her for a threesome. There were photos. Andrew on all fours over a woman lying on the floor, her face obscured. Andrew with his hand on a woman's waist, looking down at her. Andrew with his hand on her stomach. The files also showed emails between Andrew and Epstein continuing well after Andrew claimed he'd cut ties. In one email from 2010, after Epstein had already served his jail sentence, Andrew was still communicating with him. In October 2025, King Charles III initiated formal proceedings to strip Andrew of all his titles. On November 3, 2025, Letters Patent removed his title of Prince and his style of Royal Highness. His appointments to the Order of the Garter and the Royal Victorian Order were annulled. In December, the Ministry of Defense removed his honorary rank of Vice Admiral. He was reduced to Commander, retired. His name was erased from the official royal registers. And on February 5, 2026, just days after the latest Epstein files dropped, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor moved out of Royal Lodge, his sprawling home in Windsor. He was relocated to a private property on the King's Sandringham estate, 140 miles away from the royal family. Prime Minister Keir Starmer, in an unprecedented move, called on Andrew to testify before Congress about his dealings with Epstein. Starmer said anyone with information should be prepared to share it. Andrew has stayed silent. But Andrew wasn't the only royal in the files. Norway's crown princess Mette-Marit appeared in emails with Epstein from 2012. She told him he was very charming and asked if it was inappropriate for a mother to suggest two naked women carrying a surfboard for my 15-year-old son's wallpaper. This comes as her son, Marius Borg-Høiby, is set to go on trial for rape and 37 other crimes, including assaults and drug offenses. The files also revealed payments. Former UK politician Peter Mandelson received $75,000 in 3 separate transactions from Epstein in 2003 and 2004. Mandelson resigned from his position, saying he had no recollection of the payments but felt regretful and sorry about being linked to the Epstein case. Slovakia's national security advisor, Miroslav Lajčák, appeared in photos with Epstein. He resigned immediately after the files were released. But the biggest shockwaves hit Silicon Valley, because the files revealed that Jeffrey Epstein had deep, extensive ties to the tech industry. At least 20 prominent tech executives, investors, and researchers were in regular contact with Epstein. Bill Gates appeared in over 2,500 files. The documents included calendar entries and emails showing meetings and calls between Gates and Epstein from 2013 and 2014. But the most disturbing part? Draft emails Epstein wrote to himself, claiming he'd been Gates' right hand and participated in things that were ethically unsound and potentially illegal. In one email, Epstein claimed he helped Gates obtain drugs and manage consequences of sexual encounters, including dealing with sexually transmitted infections. Gates has previously said he regrets ever knowing Epstein, but the files show the relationship was deeper than he admitted. Elon Musk appeared in over 1,100 files. Emails showed Epstein contacting Musk in 2012 about infrastructure projects. On November 25, 2012, Musk asked Epstein, "What day/night will be the wildest party on your island?" In December 2013, Musk wrote, "We'll be in the BVI/St. Bart's area over the holidays. Is there a good time to visit?" Emails from Epstein's assistant scheduled Musk to visit the island on December 6, 2014, though another email questioned if it was still happening. Musk has claimed on social media that he never visited the island, that he declined repeated invitations. He said he was aware email correspondence could be misinterpreted. But here's where it gets interesting. Elon Musk and Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn co-founder, got into a public feud on social media after the files dropped. Reid Hoffman appeared in over 2,600 files. The documents showed he had extensive contact with Epstein related to fundraising for the MIT Media Lab. Hoffman has admitted he visited Epstein's island, saying it was tied to philanthropic activities and MIT fundraising. In emails from the files, Hoffman sent gifts to Epstein's New York home, including ice cream for the girls and something that may strike your funny bone for the island. Hoffman also invited Epstein to play at his island or New Mexico ranch. When the files dropped, Musk attacked Hoffman on X, saying, "Epstein hounded me relentlessly to go to his pedo island, and I always declined. Not you, though. You actually went." Hoffman fired back with a screenshot of Musk's 2012 email asking about the wildest party on Epstein's island. Musk responded with a screenshot showing an email from Epstein saying, "Reid was on the island last weekend. Do you think you will be in Carib for Christmas?" Musk said this is how he knew Hoffman went to the island, and that Epstein tried to use that fact to convince Musk to go. Neither Musk nor Hoffman has been accused of any wrongdoing related to Epstein, but their public feud revealed how deeply Epstein had embedded himself in the tech world. Peter Thiel appeared in over 2,200 files. The documents show repeated direct correspondence between Thiel and Epstein from 2014 to 2019, mostly about lunches, meetings, and calls. Some emails included political discussions and references to encrypted communication. Catherine Ruemmler, now the chief legal officer at Goldman Sachs, appeared in emails exchanging Christmas gifts with Epstein. She called him one of the most fascinating people I've ever met and told his assistant, "I adore him. It's like having another older brother." Emails showed Epstein helped Ruemmler draft a public statement declining a job offer as Attorney General in 2013. Epstein suggested edits, advising her on how the statement would be received in international news reports. Ruemmler has said she regrets ever knowing Epstein and denies representing him or advocating on his behalf. Goldman Sachs says her relationship was professional, but the emails tell a different story. What about Donald Trump? The files show Trump was photographed extensively with Epstein in the 1990s and early 2000s. There are party photos, social events. Trump on record saying Epstein was a terrific guy who likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. The files include allegations from a woman who filed a lawsuit in 2016 claiming Trump raped her, when she was 13 at Epstein's mansion. The documents describe Trump allegedly being angry that Epstein was the one to take the woman's virginity. Trump has denied the allegations. The lawsuit was dropped. The Justice Department has noted that the files may include fake or falsely submitted documents, as everything sent to the FBI by the public was included. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche said on CNN that new charges for anyone are unlikely. He said in July, the Department of Justice reviewed all evidence and determined that no additional prosecutions would be brought. Which brings us to the most important question. Why? Why has no one else been charged? The files show Epstein didn't work alone. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, serving 20 years. But what about everyone else? What about the men who flew on his plane? The men who visited his island? The men who attended his parties? The files contain FBI diagrams attempting to chart the network of Epstein's victims and the timeline of their abuse. They contain investigative memos, interview notes, evidence of a massive criminal operation that spanned decades. But the Department of Justice says there's no client list. No list of men who paid for sex with trafficked girls. Some people believe that's because Epstein didn't charge. He traded access for access, influence for influence, blackmail for power. Others believe the truth is simpler and more disturbing, that powerful people are being protected, that the justice system is designed to shield the elite. Because here's what we know for certain. Jeffrey Epstein had connections to intelligence agencies. Alexander Acosta, the prosecutor who gave him the sweetheart deal in 2008, later said he was told Epstein belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone. We know Epstein had surveillance cameras throughout his properties. Cameras in bedrooms, cameras in bathrooms, thousands of hours of footage. Where is that footage now? The FBI seized it in 2019. Has anyone been charged based on what's in those videos? We know Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of sex trafficking. But trafficking to whom? Who were the men? Why haven't they been named? Why haven't they been charged? The files released in January 2026 contain 3 million pages, 2,000 videos, 180,000 images. But survivors and their lawyers say the Department of Justice has released at best half the documents they're required to under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Congressman Ro Khanna, one of the co-authors of the law, said on Meet the Press that the Justice Department is not complying fully, that there's more, that the public deserves to see it all. A federal judge in New York held a hearing on February 5, 2026, on a request from victims' lawyers to shut down the DOJ's website until all victim information is properly redacted. Multiple victims reported being harassed and flooded with disgusting private messages after their names appeared unredacted in the files. The same files that carefully protected powerful men exposed the women who were victimized as children. What does that tell you about whose interests the system serves? Let me bring this full circle. Virginia Giuffre fought for over a decade to bring Epstein and his network to justice. She testified. She sued. She spoke to journalists. She founded organizations to support other survivors. And she paid the ultimate price. The trauma never left her. The abuse she suffered as a child, the exploitation, the years of being called a liar, of having her credibility attacked, of watching powerful men walk free while she carried the weight of their crimes. In her memoir, Nobody's Girl, published posthumously in October 2025, Virginia wrote about being sexually abused by her father starting when she was 7 years old, about meeting Ghislaine Maxwell at Mar-a-Lago when she was 16, about being groomed and trafficked, about being raped by Prince Andrew when she was 17. She wrote about the moment she decided to speak out. It was when her daughter was born. She looked at her baby girl and thought, I can't let this happen to anyone else. But the cost was everything. Her marriage fell apart. She lost custody battles for her children. She was in constant legal battles. She was re-traumatized every time she had to tell her story. Every time a new Epstein connection was revealed. Every time she saw another powerful man get away with it. On April 25, 2025, Virginia Giuffre ended her life. She was 41 years old. A mother. A survivor. A fighter. 9 months later, the files she fought for were finally released. Files that vindicated everything she said. Files that showed she was telling the truth all along. But she wasn't there to see it. Now let me ask you something. How many other survivors are out there? The FBI estimated that Epstein abused dozens of girls at his Palm Beach mansion alone. Hundreds more at his other properties. His island. His New York townhouse. His New Mexico ranch. Where are they now? How many of them are still carrying that trauma? How many of them watch the news and see billionaires and princes and presidents and think, he did it to me too? And how many of them will never come forward because they've seen what happens when you do? They've seen Virginia Giuffre attacked, doubted, dragged through courts for years. They've seen her win a settlement only to lose her life to the weight of it all. The Epstein case isn't over. It's not close to over. Because the files are still being released. Because survivors are still speaking out. Because public pressure is building. In the UK, there are now calls to remove Prince Andrew from the line of succession entirely. Politicians from both parties are saying he should face criminal charges. The US Congress has invited him to testify. So far, he's refused. In Silicon Valley, the revelations about Epstein's tech connections are causing fractures. Investors are questioning why these men maintained relationships with a convicted sex offender. Employees are demanding accountability. In Norway, the revelations about Crown Princess Mette-Marit have shocked the nation. Combined with her son's upcoming rape trial, the royal family is facing a legitimacy crisis. And in the United States, there are growing calls for a full congressional investigation, not just into Epstein, but into how the justice system failed so spectacularly. How a man who should have been in prison for life in 2008 was instead given a work release deal and allowed to continue his crimes for another decade. How the FBI had evidence of trafficking, had victim testimony, had surveillance footage, and did nothing. How the Department of Justice is still protecting names, still redacting documents, still refusing to prosecute. Because that's what this is really about. It's not just about Jeffrey Epstein. It's about a system that protects the powerful and discards the vulnerable. A system where a billionaire can abuse children for decades, and the worst that happens is 18 months in a private jail wing with work release. A system where victims who speak out are attacked, doubted, and destroyed, while the men who abuse them walk free, give speeches, run companies, and sit in positions of power. Virginia Giuffre's final Instagram post, 3 weeks before her death, was about a car accident she'd been in. She said she was seriously injured. Later, her family said she hadn't intended for the post to become public. In the months before her death, she'd reported an assault to police in January 2025. She was fighting for custody of her children. She was going through an emergency department visit in April, just days before she died. The coroner's investigation is still ongoing. Some people close to Virginia have been careful not to speculate publicly about whether her death was suicide or misadventure. They say the official process must run its course. But here's what we know. Virginia Giuffre was a survivor who became an advocate, who turned her pain into purpose, who refused to let powerful men silence her. And ultimately, the weight of it all became too much to bear. The files she fought for are now public. The men she accused are being exposed. The system she challenged is starting to crack. But she's not here to see it. So when you read about the Epstein files, when you see the names of billionaires and princes and presidents, remember Virginia Giuffre. Remember the girl who was abused at 16 and spent her whole life fighting for justice. Remember that behind every document in those files is a real person. A child who was exploited. A life that was destroyed. A survivor who carried that trauma every single day. And ask yourself, is this justice? When the predator is dead, his accomplice is in prison, but everyone else walks free. When the victim who exposed it all is dead, but the powerful men she accused are still living comfortable lives. The Epstein case has revealed something fundamental about our world. That there are two justice systems. One for the rich and powerful, where crimes are overlooked, deals are made, and consequences are minimal. And one for everyone else, where speaking truth to power can cost you everything. Jeffrey Epstein is dead. Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison. But the network, the system that enabled them, that's still intact. The files are out there now. 3 million documents, thousands of videos, hundreds of thousands of images, evidence of crimes, evidence of connections, evidence of a web that stretches across the globe, touching the highest levels of government, business, science, and royalty. What happens next depends on whether we demand accountability, whether we refuse to let this story fade, whether we honor the memory of Virginia Giuffre and every other survivor by insisting that power does not equal immunity. Because right now, as we speak, there are people in those files who are still in positions of power, still making decisions that affect millions of lives, still being treated as respectable members of society. And there are survivors who are still waiting for justice, still carrying trauma, still hoping that someone somewhere will finally hold the people who hurt them accountable. The Epstein files are the largest document release in American legal history. But documents alone don't create justice. People do. So the question is, what are we going to do with this information? Are we going to let it become another scandal that fades from the news cycle? Another example of the powerful getting away with it? Or are we going to demand more? Demand full disclosure. Demand prosecutions. Demand a reckoning. Virginia Giuffre fought for justice until her final day. She never gave up, even when the cost was unbearable. Even when the system failed her over and over again. The least we can do is finish what she started. The files are public now. The truth is out there. What we do with it, that's up to us. Remember her name, Virginia Giuffre. Remember what she fought for. And don't let her fight be in vain.